excited to be able to share during this very difficult time some information and adventures that we live together. So, you know, when I was a kid, Mira's age, I was a diver already, because in those days, my father had co-invented all the equipment to become scuba divers, and there was no certification. So I started diving when I was 7.5. And I've been excited and went on expeditions every time I had a vacation. Summer, 2 months, 3 months, I was on board the ship, and wherever the ship was, Calypso, and joined the team. And that was for me a very, very important time in my life, obviously, as a young person, to be exposed 3 or 4 months a year to different parts of the planet. And that's when, after my father passed away, I created Ocean Future Society to honor his philosophy. And we have a mission. And our mission is, if you protect the ocean, you protect yourself. And I'll have the pleasure of talking about how connected we are with the ocean, every one of us, whether we live near the ocean or way on top of a mountain. So it is a pleasure and an honor for me to show you a little video which we put together, which is called Protect the Ocean and You Protect Yourself. Jim, please. To the existence of every human being. This is the only way for people to understand that the quality of each and every one of our lives depend on water, depends on the ocean. My father said, people protect what they love. And so we want more people to fall in love with water, with the ocean. And I say, protect the ocean and you protect yourself. Well, I think it was very critical. I hope these images were okay. I had some problems with them. But regardless, I think the climate change is a real issue which is affecting everyone on the planet, almost 8 billion people. And today, we are learning very well because of what I call the communication revolution. We're all connected to each other wherever we live on the planet, and we can share informations, and those knowledge and education which is being shared will allow us to change all the mistakes that we've made up to now. Our consumption of oil is a real problem. The greenhouse gases that are released is contributing to the temperature of the planet, and the humidity is affected, and the rainfall is also an issue which we're not used to it because it's moving and changing. Flooding and having coastlines being washed away, and forest fires which are affecting a lot of people. But the good news is today, because of our knowledge of all the mistakes that are the consequences of the mistakes we made, we have new ways of getting energy, whether it's with the sun or with the wind or with the ocean and the rivers. And that's something totally new, which I'm sure in the very near future, people are going to be able to appreciate, understand, and coming up with new technology, new way of capturing all that energy, which is free. We don't have to demolish anything. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and I'd like to show you the greatest challenge, another video that we have produced to talk about this problem of climate change. Climate change is the greatest challenge in human history. Our collective future depends on a healthy environment. We have the solutions of innovative clean energy. We now need the willingness to put them into action. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our water planet. Every day is the perfect opportunity to create the sustainable future. We are the only species on the planet that has the opportunity and the privilege not to disappear. So we have a mission, and our mission is diversity is synonymous of stability. The more we preserve and protect species of plants and animals on land, plants and animals in the ocean, and of course, every species of humans, we have the ability to ultimately do the right thing to protect what we all depend upon. You know, every plant, every animal is the capital. You can only take off the interest produced by the capital, but you can't touch the capital. And when a species of fish disappears because we're taking more than the interest, same thing with plants and animals on land and in the ocean. So that's all education, and we are learning and we're doing a better job now, but we are a long way to doing exactly what needs to be done, because there is another 100 million people coming on the planet every year. So I had the pleasure to be with a lot of young people in the past and in different parts of the world. But in this particular case, I was with Alexandra, who literally wanted to talk to me, sit down with me, and tell me what she wants to do. She was 10 years old. Oh, I'm excited. Could we have the video, please? Good morning, Alexandra.
Good morning.
You know, I'm amazed because I found out that at your age, you wanted to help the ocean and help ocean futures, and I'm very, very, very grateful. And I want to know what makes you decide to do this.
Well, in my family for a long time, we have deep passions for things, and one of them is the ocean, and to love each other and to love ourselves and what we do. And we all love the ocean, and we all like to help the ocean too, and make the world a better place.
Why?
We just, like you always say, when you protect the ocean, you protect yourself, and I think that's really true.
But why did you specifically pick up the mission of Ocean Futures to dedicate yourself so nicely?
Some companies, they try to help the ocean, but they might not do the same thing as you do, and you you engage in a lot of things that other people might not, and I like that.
What is your message to the world?
If you find a piece of trash, if you pick it up, just like the smallest piece of trash can make the biggest difference.
Do you know why the ocean is so important to all of us?
Because the ocean breathes in carbon dioxide, then breathes out oxygen, and then if we didn't have the ocean, then we wouldn't be able to be here because we wouldn't be able to breathe.
I am very, very touched by what you did, what you're saying, and I think that
young people like you are the decision makers of tomorrow, who will be making much, much better decisions than we have made. And I am extremely grateful, because when I was your age, I was in the ocean all the time. I was having fun. I was seeing things that nobody had ever seen before. But I didn't know that we needed to take care of it. And with a young person like you, there is hope. Do you believe there is hope? Now, you're only 10 years old, and do you already know what you want to do?
Yeah, I wanna be a scientist and like help like the ocean and do like I want to make good decisions and not do like bad things to pollute the ocean or anything. And I want to help everybody else in the world send out big messages that they should watch out for what they're doing.
You don't know how much you're touching me emotionally, because young people like you give me total conviction that yes, we're going to make it. You know, we're the only species on the planet that has the privilege to decide not to disappear, like many, many other species have already disappeared. So with young people like you, we can make a difference. And I'm so grateful. You have no idea how much I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Can I hug you?
Well, thanks to young people like Alexandra and many others we have had the privilege of meeting, I'm very, very excited in this particular case to be connected with one of those unbelievable, extraordinary young people who want to make a difference. And it is my pleasure and honor to and take advantage of your birthday to have the privilege of introducing Mira to all of us and listening to what she has to share with us. Mira, please.
Hello. Shall we start off by asking some questions?
Well, personally, if I may, I'd like to ask you, what is your goal? What do you want to do at your age? You're 12, and where are we going?
I definitely want to be able to educate myself about a lot of like important things, issues that I care about, find something that like I really have a passion for, learn more about that, study that, really whatever I can do to help or like benefit a good cause.
And why are you wanting to be on television and being seen by hopefully thousands and thousands of people?
I love sharing my point of view, my perspective on things, and there are a lot of things I want to share with other people or tell other people about, things I want to learn, and I enjoy talking to people about that. And of course, like I enjoy being live and having live conversations with a lot of people tuning in. That's definitely helps me like get what I want to say out there.
So what is your priority amongst all these things? Because you have a lot of choices, 12 years old, where you're going to go to finish schools, and what ultimately that will lead you to where you want to go in life.
Um,
Are you a diver?
um, I'm not yet. Oh, I love water. I've always loved the ocean, pools, swimming, and diving is something that's definitely of interest.
Well, if your parents would help you, you can be a diver. You can be certified at the age of 10. So you 2 years older than a diver. But uh, what is your favorite uh, action today at your age?
Um, what do you say? What would you mean by that?
What do you want to do to make a difference uh, today every time you're speaking to people?
I honestly want to spread awareness about a lot of things, about important issues, things that people may not know about.
Can you mention those issues that you specifically would like to address?
Um, I definitely want to spread awareness about the issues like affecting Earth. Definitely, I want to make a difference, and I want to like help people or hopefully encourage people to take care of like the planet we live on, the ocean. A lot of that is definitely one of the main things because obviously like there's so many amazing things on Earth, but if um, there might not be an Earth if we don't like, take care of it.
Well, there might be no humans if we don't take care of it. So we need to take care of it so you can enjoy as much as I have done it and protect everything that we need to protect to continue to enjoy it. And later on with future generations to share it with others. And I really, really believe we can do it. So maybe there are questions that have been taken from outside, from the people who are following us and trying to answer those questions. I don't know if it's the appropriate time to do that, but I'd love for people to ask you questions.
Okay, okay, I was told to ask a list of questions I have first, and then I believe we are going to take questions from the people viewing this at a certain point.
Yes,
Okay, so are you ready if I start asking questions?
sure.
Okay, this is one I was emailed by someone. How do we communicate with people who are complicit about environmental issues effectively? I find this tends to be a difficult task, especially with older people and family members. I would love to know of any practical advice.
Well, I'm sure you know some of the things that need to be done. But obviously, every one of us, you and I, we, many people, can help those people better understand that we need to literally realize that we have the privilege of living on this planet and everything has a value. And the word trash or déchet and so on is a mistake. We need to recycle it, reuse it, waste as little as we can, and reuse as much as we can. But we also know that there are new industries that can process that and recycle it and make it usable again. So we need to, with young people like you, be able to pass on the information, and then they go to see their parents and their grandparents, and they can share the information with them and convince them about changing their way of treating what we all depend upon on the planet, because as we add, as I mentioned earlier, 100 million people to the planet, the impact and the pressure on everything on the planet is increasing. But you can help, you can help, you will help.
Was there a specific moment when you knew you wanted to dedicate your life to studying the ocean?
To what with the ocean?
Was there a specific moment when you knew you wanted to dedicate your life to studying the ocean?
I think it should be part of the educational program, because remember, if you drink a glass of water, whether you live on the coastline, inside, on top of a mountain, you're drinking the ocean. There's one single water system on the planet. And the plants and the animals, like us, we need that water. And of course, the quality of that water is connected to the quality of our lives, whether plants or animals or ourselves. So that's something which to me is a critical information that we need to share with everybody else. I have a very good friend who works with me, and we did a little show where we went on top of a mountain with his children, and they went skiing on the mountain because there was a lot of snow. Well, they skiing on the ocean. So once they got that, they went back to school and they were sharing that with their children and with their teachers. And it's very, very important to share as much as we can that kind of information with as many people as possible. And of course, young people like you, hey, you have a big mission. Thank you.
What career path do you think you might have taken if you did not study the ocean, or was there really no doubt that that was what you wanted to do?
Well, I don't think I can answer that question because since I was 7 or younger, my father was always in the French Navy, and he was in the water all the time with his friends. And they were, at the time, they were catching fish. They were spearfishing fish, free diving, and but he couldn't hold. And because he had a camera, one of the very first camera, he was holding it, and he couldn't follow his friends as far down or for as long as they were underwater to follow them and to film them. So he said one day he came back up and he spoke to my grandfather and said, I need to bring some air with me. What can I do? Because I want to follow my friends so I can film them when they're catching fish. And I remember all of this. And an engineer was presented to my dad, and they co-invented the regulator, which you put in your mouth, and now you can go underwater and you can breathe because you're bringing air with you. And he was able to start making the film that he started when he was, much older than you, but not that much, in his 20s. So it's very exciting to see that you need to follow your dream. Always follow your dreams. And that's what he did. And then he started making television programs or feature film programs for all his life.
When people watch your films, what message or inspiration do you hope they will take away from them?
Well, the message that people want to know from us is more and more education. And that's why our educational program, Ambassador of the Environment, is becoming so important to share everywhere. We also produce little shows the attention of people for a show of an hour and a half, that's a thing of the past. People like to see it on their cell phone, on their computer, and so on. So we are now able, with my colleagues, to make little shows, some of them like what I showed earlier, to share with as many people as possible, and to make them connect, whether they live near the ocean, near a river, on top of a mountain or whatever, or on top of a 6-story building, and that water that they drink up there, well, they understand where it's coming from and how connected we are, and why what lives in it is so important. And that's something that we do. Education, and we do it both by producing shows, by being with young people like you in different parts of the world, or we also sit down with decision makers. Now, remember, decision makers could be your family, could be your neighbors, could be your friends, but there's a point where you said, I'd like to speak to the representative of my state, for example. I'd like to sit down with those people. And it's very hard. Very often they kind of keep you outside. But if you make them understand you're not there to criticize or point a finger, remember, if you point a finger, there's 3 fingers pointing at you, you reach their heart. And then they want to sit down. And you can share information with them and provide them with information which they will be able to use to make better decisions. And that's how I was, and for me it's a privilege. And I learned that, of course, from my dad and many of his colleagues. I've been able to sit down with decision makers in industries, in governments, the President of the United States of America, W. Bush, because I made a show on the northwestern Hawaiian island, all the islands 1,200 miles. And I was blown away by how much was destroyed and garbage in the middle of the Pacific, and animals dying and overfishing and so on, that I did a show. And I asked if I could show it to the White House, to the president. And through the connections that we had, we were invited at the White House to present the show, Voyage to Cure. And I was amazed because the president invited 50 people to come to listen to that presentation. And I came in and I sat down, and I was sitting next to Mrs. Bush, who during the projection asked me questions nonstop. And at the end of the show, the president asked me, can you come to my table? We're gonna have dinner together with the other members. There were 6 people at our table. There were many little tables. And he asked me questions during the entire dinner. I couldn't even eat. I didn't have time. And at the end, he said, thank you to everybody. He stood up and he said, look, those words, let's get it done. And I didn't know what it meant. But the next day I found out that he created, and it became a formal thing, the largest marine protected area in the world. And that's what you can do. I did it, you can do it. It's an issue of convincing people about the importance of protecting ourselves and the future generations. And one day you will have children and grandchildren, and you will want to do that. And that's why I still want to do that today. I will never stop until I get switched off. And I hope to live to 107, because I want to celebrate 100 years of scuba diving. But in the meantime, I'm going to celebrate 75 years in September. Voila. Follow your dreams.
If you could tell everyone one thing that you, let's just say, what's one thing you want everyone to know about the ocean?
Well, one thing is very difficult because we all depend on the ocean. And that's why I say it symbolically, when you drink a glass of water, you're drinking the ocean. But everything in the ocean depends on the quality of the ocean. So you have plankton. Plankton are the plants and animals, zoo and phytoplankton. Some of them live on the bottom of the ocean and come a little bit during the night. And then the sun shine, they go down. And the animals are there also, and they eat each other. And then you have different species of creatures, little fish, bigger fish, you eat those plankton and little fish and bigger fish and bigger fish and bigger fish. And it goes on to the fish that you buy and you eat in your home. They could not be there on your plate if the plankton did not exist. And in the food chain, it goes to the sharks, goes to the dolphins, and it goes to the whales. And the whales and dolphins at the top of the food chain are what we are at the top of the food chain on land. So we need to keep that in mind. And we need to make sure that we manage the ocean, which is 71% of the planet, and not take more than nature can produce. And we can do it. We're heading in that direction. The time is of the essence. And the longer we, or the slower we take action, the more difficult and expensive it is. But we can do it. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here.
Okay, I believe now I am going to look through the Q&A section and see what people viewing this have asked and answer those questions. Okay, so we have a question from, I'm not 100% sure, this is Tanya, but they said, plastics in the ocean is a nightmare. I know things are being done to stop or reduce it getting into the water, but what of all the plastic that is already there harming fish, mammals, and ecosystems?
Well, you're going to answer that question?
I think this one is directed towards you.
Oh, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah, there is already a lot of plastic in the ocean and harming, yeah, animals, ecosystems, a lot of things, and we definitely need to do something about it. I don't know if there's yet like a specific way that what do you think can be done to take care of the plastic that's already in the ocean harming?
Well, first of all, it starts at home. At home, we can make sure it doesn't go onto the water system. And there are places where they can be recycled. And we need to understand that if any of that goes into the ocean, it decomposes. And as it decomposed, you have all kinds of products that are absorbed within the food chain. And as I mentioned earlier, it goes up in the food chain and it goes right into those fish and animals, dolphins, whales, that feed on whatever they can catch in the ocean. And we take that stuff and put it in our plates. That plastic you dump is coming back on your plate and you're going to eat it. So We can change that. There are new technologies to capture everything before it goes into the ocean. And for example, rivers. We have thousands and thousands of little rivers that are bringing a lot of chemicals and heavy metals and so on into the ocean. We can have new technology at the entrance of this river or at the exit when they go to the ocean and capture all of this to recycle. Because if you allow that to go out there, not only is it going to affect what we depend upon, but you're wasting money because these chemicals and heavy metals can be recycled. We can reuse it. So that's money. So there are millions and millions of new jobs that can be created for people who are going to make those little places collecting everything. And that will allow the ocean to prosper and to get better and better and do very well. So I think there's a huge opportunity, and that's why education is still very, very critical to share that with as many people as we can. And here we go, young people like you, when you've learned that, you can bring it to your family or your friends or your neighbors and share the opportunity that are there for the next generations.
Yeah. Next, Chloe submitted a question. Would you consider making a movie about ocean pollution and how plastic is affecting sea creatures?
I have done that in the past, but I'm glad to do another one because it's changing and now there are new solutions, new ideas, and be glad to do that, of course. And you can be part of it if you want to, because you asked the question and I'm sure you are concerned and you want to know, so you can help. Let's do it. You're reading other people's questions, huh?
Yeah, okay. Here is a question from Richard. What can we do to reduce acidification of the oceans?
What can we do to what?
Reduce acidification of the oceans.
What can we do to reduce the acidification of the ocean? We need to stop as quickly as we can, and it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to take a little bit of time, the use of the emission of CO2, which is due to our consumption of oil and other products, gas and so on, which are going up in space and are increasing the temperature and changing the temperature on the planet, and also end up into the ocean, and the acidification, particularly on the coastal region where the coral reefs are, is now becoming a real problem. And so it's affecting everything that depends on those area because of the temperature, because the creatures that live there are dying. The structure of the corals is falling apart, and there are less and less places for other species, animals, whether they're shrimps, lobsters, or crabs, or fish, to live and to grow and then explore in other parts of the world. So there's a lot of opportunities there to change that. And I think we're heading somewhat a little bit in that direction with new cars that are solar powered, and that does help, but we need to do a lot more than just that at the international level, and to use new sources of energy, as we mentioned earlier, whether it's the wind or the sun or the currents and so on. For example, at the exit of those little rivers, we probably can create some energy there. It was just the power of the currents.
Okay. Cray submitted another question that I'm going to read. I would like to ask a question I asked Jacques Cousteau back in 1972 and hope to get a different answer. This question was, can we remove some of the pollutants, or are there people able to remove pollutants out of the ocean? It's been 45 years last speaking with Jean-Michel, tour guide in the Living Sea Museum aboard the Queen Mary 1971 to 77.
You're talking about the Queen Mary, which is in Long Beach?
Yes, I believe so.
Because that's the one I worked on to create a museum in those days. And that's how I ended up living in the United States then, and more and more and more, particularly since all the post-production of the films that my father was making with his team were being done in here in California, or in Los Angeles, I should say. And I think that the pollution that we were saying then was mostly visible things because our primary sense is vision. But we never, for many years later, realized the effect of plastic, which was not as available 45 years ago as it is now, and the effect of chemicals. You know, let's not forget, when you take a tablet of aspirin because you have a headache, and hopefully it works, where is that chemical going? It goes right into the ocean. Nobody knows that. We need to share that and find ways to capture it before it goes into the ocean. And I think there are huge opportunities for that to happen. And so what my father did, as you mentioned, 40 some years ago, triggered the concern. We didn't really understand all of that then, but it helped us go into that directions. And there's a lot more to be done, of course. And with young people like you, I think we're going to be able to do it. I really believe we're going to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here trying to share that with you and the people who are listening.
Okay, here is another question that was submitted by Tim. How does the warming of the climate affect global fisheries?
Global what?
Fisheries.
Fisheries? Well, obviously, there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of places where the temperature is increasing the waves action, the storms, the hurricanes, and a lot of places where a lot of life for small creatures are critical when they were very young, or critical where they normally live, like lobsters and so on, shrimps and whatnot. And those are being destroyed, thrown away. And a lot of the coastlines are being destroyed, and the land and the rocks and everything is falling into the ocean. And the people who live right next to it, they lose their properties, they lose their boats, they lose the pleasure of being on those coastlines. I worried a lot about people on islands which have no altitude, because today, with the increase of temperature, the ocean is expanding. And that creates more power for the waves to take action, and the storms and the hurricanes to become bigger and bigger and stronger. So by being able to control our emission of CO2, we're going to be able to control the temperature. And let's not forget that every other breath of air you take is coming from the ocean, whether you live near the ocean or up on a mountain. So that is very, very important. And of course, the creatures that are connected to the effect that we have on the ocean, well, some of them cannot survive and disappear. And the weaker the system is, the more dangerous it is. And that's why diversity is synonymous of stability, and it is part of our educational program.
Okay, here is a question that was submitted by Robin. How many species do you think you have encountered during your scuba diving career?
It's a very good question, and I will not be able to answer it very properly. I probably have seen thousands of species. I don't know how many, and I know that there are tens of thousands of species still in the ocean that I haven't seen yet. Because every time I go diving and people ask me, what is your best dive? I always tell them the next one is that I find either behavior or species that I've never seen before. And we all limited to shallow waters. We cannot go and spend a lot of time down deep, but I want to. And there's a gentleman, for example, up in Canada, who is an amazing gentleman, who Phil Newton has created different submarines and equipment and so on. And now he's created the exosuit. And I haven't used it yet, but I'm certified now. You can be inside and you can be taken and put in the ocean and you're on your own and you can go down to 1,000 feet, spend 10 hours, and you can come back in 5 minutes and you're protected from the pressure. That's going to allow people who use that, scientists and cinematographers and so on, to discover a lot of new species. And how can you protect what you don't understand? So we need to know what's there in order to protect it. And so life is a very exciting time. Technology like the exosuit and of course submarines and whatnot. Now the exosuit has propellers that way, and you can control it with your right foot, your left foot, your hands are free. You can literally take samples for the scientific community, and you have a high definition camera on top of your head. You have lights on your tummy, and you can film and bring back all that information to the public, to young people like you. Maybe one day you'll be certified in an exosuit. You should go there.
Okay, let's do one more question from the Q&A box, and then if that works with everyone, we could do a live call-in question. So I'm going to read a question. This was submitted by an anonymous attendee. Is there any way that Jean-Michel could convince President Trump to respect the environment and stop denying climate change?
I would be very glad to sit down with him if he allowed me to do that. But I don't know that he would. Although, you know, I would be as nice as I can be to explain to him how connected we are and how much we depend on the ocean and what needs to be done. But I think right now he's very busy wanting to do other things. And I don't think that's something that I will have the privilege of being able to do. I would sit down with anybody who wants me to sit down with.
Okay, should we do some live questions now?
That sounds like a great idea, guys. So the way to do this, for everybody who's out there in the audience who wants to speak directly to Jean-Michel or Mira, is that you just click the raise the hand icon that's in the center of the bar on the bottom, and then I can call on you. So I see the hands are like stacking up fast, which is good. And I know that Dan has been there for a while. So Dan, if you can unmute yourself, I've made it so that you can ask a question directly.
Jean-Michel, this is Dan LeBeau, and I haven't spoken with you in about 37 years. Norfolk, Virginia helped you prepare the Calypso for the Amazon expedition. But
Yes.
I've really been proud of, if I could say it that way, of all you've done over the years for the Earth. And I wanted to mention this. There is a movement taking place right now around the Earth. It's a document that's been signed by 6,000 academics worldwide about the democratization of work. And this talks about actually giving people work through governmental help, which could be the work towards the reversal of climate change, protection of the oceans, that all these things are necessary to be done, but the positions, you could say, in jobs need to be created to do it. Some of the things you talked about earlier about maybe catching some of the plastic, recycling certain things, all those things could be performed by people who may be out of work right now. Plus, we've got millions and millions out of work right now because of COVID-19. We also have much activism going on worldwide about this. So it's a couple things. I'm wondering, I guess we're asking for your assistance. Is there some way that we could, can I say, capitalize on the movements that are taking place around the Earth right now and make sure that the oceans are not forgotten in these movements, urging the governments to protect the oceans? And I would also like to send you the document, Democratization of Work. Like I say, 6,000 academics so far have signed it. And then you could be able to look it over and see what it's driving at, and the fact that it could be a great thing towards working to clean this Earth up.
Thank you very much, Dan. Jean-Michel, I think the question in there that is worthwhile responding to, which was interesting, is that there seems to be a lot of people who are changing how they work. Do you see the ocean and cleanup as a platform for a lot of people to change their lives, to start to moving in this direction to make a difference?
Well, of course, there's huge opportunities. The question is, we need to not just the support of scientists and resources and so on, but we need the support of decision makers and the financial help to make that happen. I hope it's heading in that direction and providing millions and millions of new jobs, which I'm totally convinced can be done, but we need to be able to convince the people who make the decision. Let's not forget one thing, and I know it's very difficult. There is one human species on the planet. The different diversity of it, different languages, different religions, but that has nothing to do with borders. The borders is a thing of the past. And we need to work together more and more and more, wherever we feel we can be helpful with different parts of different populations around the planet, different countries, if you want to still call it that way. But for me, borders, whether when I was in the Amazon, I was in Brazil, in Chile, in 6 different countries without even knowing I was going through their borders. So that was a thing that was okay then, but now we need to slowly head in that direction and change it. And that will allow us to create huge new businesses and opportunities to take care not only of ourselves, but by taking care of what we all depend upon, whether it's the quality of the water in the ocean or the quality of life in the ocean and on land, for the privilege of being the one species that will continue non-stop being on this beautiful planet, which is a secret in the space. And I really believe we can head in that direction. With young people like Mira, we can do it.
That's great. Let's see, I know Carolyn has had her hand up for a while. So Carolyn, if you can unmute yourself and like to ask a question to Jean-Michel or to Mira.
Hi, yeah, thank you. This is Carolyn Shield. I got to meet you, Jean-Michel, a few years ago in California. I'm a middle school science teacher in Massachusetts. And my question is, you mentioned that there's going to be 75 years of scuba diving in September. Are you planning to be part of an event or something to celebrate that wonderful milestone?
You're very, very nice. I want to celebrate, obviously, but also, and with my colleagues, the ones that are still very active, I want to do a show and to celebrate the planet, celebrate the privilege of the human species at that occasion. Because if you look at the people who were diving when I started at the age of 7.5, those people either are no longer with us, or they have retired from diving a long time ago. Because when they started diving, of course, they were in their 20s or 30s or whatever. And those people, most of them are no longer with us, which is very sad, because they were my friends. They were part of my family, many of them. And there are very few that are still around. But they are the ones that later on, 10, 15, 20 years later, became part of our expeditions. And I would like them to be part of it, to celebrate 75 years of scuba diving. And obviously, that's step number one. But we're going to have to wait for another 25 years to celebrate my 100 years, and a little more to celebrate 100 years of scuba diving, but I'm going to have to be 107.
Well, hopefully when you, this fall, when you celebrate with some of your friends, maybe you'll do some live streams so we can celebrate with you.
I'd love to, Caroline. That's very nice questions. You should be, why don't you get in touch with us, and we'll see what can be done.
That would be great. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Stay well.
Let's take one or two more, because these people have been waiting and these are really fun. So Robin, if you would like to unmute yourself and would like to ask a question, please do. Robin, are you there? Can you find the unmute button?
So nowadays, a lot of plastic is being, like, a lot of food and other things are being packaged in plastic and then getting thrown in the ocean. How can I help with that?
Well, I think Mira can help us, but I want to say right away, I try not to use any plastic anymore. And I eliminate. I have bags which I carry myself, which are not made out of plastic. And that allow me to go shopping or to carry things. But everybody should do that as much as possible, and encourage the plastic manufacturers to use a lot of their profit to put it into alternative and other ways of using what we were using plastic with other products, whether it's metal or wood or paper. And even the paper, there are good ones and bad ones. We have to be very careful, but that can be also looked into. And there are ways to improve But I don't want the plastic manufacturers to go out of business. I want them to come up, because they made a lot of money, to come up with a new way of taking care of ourselves. If they care, these people care about their own family, children and grandchildren.
That's great. And I think with that, we're going to have to wrap it up. So I'm going to leave it to the two of you to close this down with your final comments, please.
Well, since I started, I'm going to be doing my little comment very quickly, and then Mira will have to close the program. But I just want you to know that I really am very touched that we were able to be speaking to Mira, and also to have her questions and listen to other people, because that's where we need the old people like me need to focus on, is the next generations of people who are going to make much better decisions. So for me, it's a privilege, and I want to say happy birthday, Mira. Happy, 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 happy birthday.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation today. It was very interesting to hear your answers to a lot of these questions, to be able to see what people tuning into this were asking. I definitely would say I gained a lot from this. This was a very fun conversation.
Thank you, Mira. Bye-bye.
We want to first thank our presenters, Jean-Michel Cousteau and Mira McInnes. This was a great conversation, bringing together diverse people, generations, and opinion for the common goal of taking care of our oceans, planet's oceans, excuse me. And I wanted to thank each of you for attending and participating. If you have additional questions or suggestions, please send them to mytownhallquestions.com. Thanks as well to our sponsors, Ocean Elders and Medley Media, for hosting and producing this event. A recording of this conversation will be available on the Ocean Elders YouTube channel shortly. Please as well see our schedule for the upcoming events for the remainder of the month, noting 2 next Friday, and check out the Ocean Elders Facebook or Twitter feeds for all future events.